All right, in this video, we are going to learn the consumer's equilibrium using indifference curve analysis. Now, before understanding this concept, there are two important concepts which you must know. One is the properties of indifference curve and also the concept of indifference map. And second is the formation of budget line. The shifting and the movement of budget line is really important to understand this concept. Okay. And even the slope of budget line you must know. Okay. And along with this, if you've studied the concept of MRS, which is marginal rate of substitution, that is also really important. Okay. So let's move further to this topic. Now, in this, let us first see what is consumer's equilibrium. So consumer's equilibrium is a situation where consumer is getting maximum satisfaction. Okay, where consumer is getting maximum satisfaction. But since every consumer is bounded by a budget or a fixed income, therefore income has to be considered. So consumer's equilibrium will be a position where consumer is utilizing whole of its budget. Along with this, consumer is also maximizing his or her satisfaction. Okay, so let us go to this definition of consumer's equilibrium. That consumer equilibrium is attained when the consumer reaches the highest possible indifference curve. When it reaches the highest possible indifference curve. So what is this highest possible indifference curve? Okay, let me just mention this. Okay, so highest possible indifference curve. Now, as I've told you, there is one important property of indifference curve, which is higher indifference curve shows higher level of satisfaction. So the difference, this indifference curve should be very high. Okay, point number one. Then point number two is we have also have to consider the budget. That's also very important, which I've already told you. Okay. Now, there are three conditions of consumer's equilibrium. Condition number one, now it might seem very technical to you, but once we'll get into the graph, you'll be clear with these three things. So just keep these three conditions in your mind and I'll explain it one by one. Okay, so the first is budget line should be tangent to indifference curve. So what is tangency of budget line? So if you've got mathematics, तो आपको थोड़ा सा idea होगा. Else I'll be explaining here, no problem. Then second is slope of indifference curve should be equal to slope of budget line. Okay. Now we also call this is we express this particular condition in this way where MRS XY is equal to MRS is equal to PX upon PY. Okay. So this is the condition of consumers equilibrium. One of the condition of consumers equilibrium, which is MRS XY is equal to PX upon PY. All right. Now the third is indifference curve should be convex to origin. So this is one of the property of indifference curve. So these three things we have to keep in mind. One is budget line, this indifference curve should be tangent to budget line. Second is MRS XY should be equal to PX upon PY. And third is indifference curve should be convex to origin. Now let us move and see the graph, and in the graph I'll be explaining you it very clearly. So at very first you can see this blue line. This blue line is our budget line. Okay, so we have got two goods here, good Y on Y axis, good X on X axis. We have got a blue line here, which is the budget line. So budget line AB you can see. Now, then we have got a pink line here. Okay, it's not line, it's a curve. So this pink one is your indifference curve. Okay, so this is one indifference curve. Now we can plot many indifference curve on the same graph, which is called as indifference map. So here in this graph, we'll be having multiple indifference curves. So as you can see, we have got three indifference curve here, IC1, IC2 and IC3. Okay, on these indifference curve, we have got different points. Okay, so for example, we have got a point here, which is D. We have got a point E. We have got a point B. And let me make some other points also. Let's give this as point F. Okay. And let me get one more point here as G. Okay. So if we look at these different combinations, my question to you is, at which point the consumer is getting maximum satisfaction? Okay, so we have to identify this. So one of the properties of indifference curve says higher indifference curve shows higher level of satisfaction. So now which curve is higher here? The higher curve is, yes, IC3. So on IC3 we have got a point F. So technically this point F should gives us maximum satisfaction. It will give us maximum satisfaction. Okay, it should give us maximum satisfaction. But there is a problem. If you have studied budget line very well, then you will identify that this F point is beyond our budget. This F point is beyond our budget. Dekho, this AB is the budget line. This F point is not within our budget. Therefore, we cannot achieve it. So this is unaffordable. Though this point is giving maximum satisfaction, but this one is unaffordable. Therefore, F point cannot be our consumer's equilibrium. Now, then comes, since affordability, there is issue of affordability. So let's do one thing. Let's erase this because F to ho hi nahi sakta. So F ko hata dete hain. Now, when it comes to budget, so what we see, there are 3 points we have got on our budget: D, E, and B. Okay, so there are 3 points: D, E, and B. These points are within our budget. But then equilibrium point should be one only. So which one we will choose as equilibrium? So what we see, D and B, they both are in which IC? They both are on IC1. Whereas this point E is on IC2. Now which one is higher, IC1 or IC2? So though these 3 points are in our budget, we can achieve them, but E is giving us more satisfaction since E is on the higher IC. So therefore, E will be our point of equilibrium. Okay, that's simple. So two things we have kept in mind. One is it should be within our budget. Second, it should give maximum satisfaction. So E is the point which is in our budget, and comparatively, E is giving more satisfaction than any other point. Okay. So E will be our equilibrium. Now, coming back to this thing, the first condition we said that budget line, this indifference curve should be tangent to budget line. So tangency का मतलब क्या हुआ? Tangency means this is budget line, blue one. Tangency means this line is just touching this and then going. That's tangency. If I have to draw here, see, if this is budget line A and B, tangent is, if IC is tangent means just touching and then passing. So that's our, this is what we call it as tangent. Secondly, indifference curve is convex to origin. This also we see. And this point E, where this point is there, where your budget line, the slope of your budget line and the slope of slope of your budget line and slope of your IC both are equal. Okay, this is where it is touching. So tangency means when the budget line, the slope of budget line is equal to the slope of indifference curve. Abhi, what is slope of budget line? What is slope of indifference curve? So budget line का slope होता है, budget line का slope is px upon py. And what is the slope of indifference curve? Indifference curve का slope क्या होता है? mrs xy. This is slope of indifference curve. तो जहां ये दोनों बराबर होता है वही हमारा इक्विलिब्रियम होता है. And in this case, the indifference curve has to be convex to origin. क्योंकि सेम पॉइंट पर अगर इंडिफरेंस कर्व कॉन्केव हो गया तो व्हाट स्टिल वी सी व्हिच इज हायर, दिस वन इज हायर, द वन व्हिच इज कॉन्वेक्स इज हायर देन द वन व्हिच इज कॉन्केव. So indifference curve has to be convex. Okay, so in this these three conditions are been fulfilled. Okay, these are the details. You can pause the video and then note them down. Okay, now look at here. So we have got points, different points here. We have got point D, H, E, F, G. Now you can easily identify where is the equilibrium. Okay, the equilibrium is at point E. Now you have to answer me why G cannot be the equilibrium, why D cannot be the equilibrium. So you have to mention the reason that why you have ignored G and D, whereas G is higher than E and D is consuming equal budget as E is consuming. Okay, so the reasons I have explained you before, but then these two things you will have to mention in your answer. Okay, now can, like, is it possible that the consumer is not at equilibrium? Is it possible? Yes, of course it's possible that the consumer is not at equilibrium. And what will happen after that? Okay, so this we are going to study. There is possibility that the consumer is not in equilibrium. Now abhi kab hoga wo? So we see at point C, this C is out of our budget, point number 1. If it is out of our budget, इसका मतलब क्या चीज हो रहा है? MRS is greater than PX upon PY. But the very important point is why we said MRS is greater than PX upon PY here. Why it cannot be lesser? At D, we know that MRS XY is equal to PX upon PY. And at point E, MRS XY is lesser than PX upon PY. So what we see, PX upon PY is constant throughout. PX upon PY is constant throughout. But MRS के साथ क्या होता है? If you have studied the property of indifference curve, और उसमें आपने ये पढ़ा है कि why indifference curve is convex to origin. The reason is MRS keeps on falling as we consume more and more goods. ठीक है? अभी देखो क्या चीज हो रहा है, MRS is maximum here, even if it is maximum here, लेकिन धीरे धीरे MRS क्या होता जाता है? डाउन होता जाता है. क्यों डाउन होता जाता है? Because consumer would like to sacrifice lesser and lesser. तो MRS यहाँ से शुरू हो रहा है जहां वो हाईएस्ट है, धीरे धीरे हमारा MRS कम होता जाता है. एक पॉइंट आएगा where MRS is equal to PX upon PY, and after this MRS will definitely be lesser than PX upon PY. Okay, so at this point MRS is greater than PX upon PY, where the consumer is consuming more of good Y. अभी वो गुड वाई को ज्यादा कंज्यूम कर रहा है, एक्स को कम कंज्यूम कर रहा है. अभी गुड वाई को ज्यादा कंज्यूम करेगा तो क्या होगा? द यूटिलिटी डेराइव्ड फ्रॉम गुड वाई विल स्टार्ट फॉलिंग, और यूटिलिटी अगर फॉल होना शुरू हो जाएगी, दिस पॉइंट विल स्टार्ट मूविंग दिस वे. और ये कब तक मूव होता रहेगा? ये इस तरफ मूव होना शुरू होगा. जब ये पॉइंट इधर मूव होना शुरू होगा, एक्स का कंजम्पशन बढ़ने लग जाएगा, वाई का कंजम्पशन कम होने लग जाएगा. और एक पॉइंट ऐसा आएगा जहां पर क्या होगा, वो MRS XY और PX upon PY क्या हो जाएगा? इक्वल हो जाएगा. That will be the point of equilibrium. So if consumer is in this situation, consumer will again get back to the equilibrium. ठीक है, कैसे होगा वापस से समझा रहा हूं. ठीक है, इसको इरेज कर देते हैं. Now I'm explaining it to you again. क्या चीज होगा? If the consumer is at this point, इसका मतलब क्या हो रहा है यहां पर? MRS XY is greater than PX upon PY. ठीक है, अभी MRS XY ज्यादा है PX upon PY से. नाउ वी नो दिस थिंग कि MRS क्या होता है, जैसे जैसे हम स्लोप में नीचे की तरफ जाएंगे MRS हमारा कम होता जाता है. ठीक है, तो इस पॉइंट पर क्या देखते हैं हम लोग कि कंज्यूमर इज कंज्यूमिंग मोर ऑफ गुड Y एंड लेस ऑफ गुड X. ठीक है, गुड X तो इतना ही कंज्यूम कर रहा है. नाउ कंज्यूमर जब गुड Y को ज्यादा कंज्यूम करेगा तो उससे मिलने वाली यूटिलिटी होगी कम, और जब X को वो कम कंज्यूम कर रहा है, इससे मिलने वाली यूटिलिटी क्या होगी? बढ़ेगी. ठीक है, तो इसकी वजह से क्या होगा? धीरे धीरे क्या करेगा वो, उसको Y वो ऑलरेडी ज्यादा कंज्यूम कर रहा है, अब धीरे धीरे Y को वो छोड़ना शुरू करेगा, X को पकड़ना शुरू करेगा. तो धीरे धीरे Y का कंजम्पशन होगा कम, X का कंजम्पशन होगा ज्यादा. तो ये जो पॉइंट है, ये पॉइंट अब धीरे धीरे मूव होना शुरू होगा, और मूव होते होते जब ये यहां पर आ जाएगा, इस पॉइंट पर क्या हो जाएगा? कंज्यूमर पहुंच जाएगा इक्विलिब्रियम में. ठीक है, जहां पर उसका बजट और उसका सेटिस्फेक्शन, दोनों की दोनों चीजें जो है वो मैच करती है. ठीक है, सिमिलरली अगर कंज्यूमर यहां पर है तो क्या होगा? नाउ यू हैव टू फिगर इट आउट. यहां होगा, इसका मतलब क्या हुआ? गुड X का कंजम्पशन ज्यादा है, Y का कंजम्पशन कम है. तो अब क्या चीज होगा? गुड एक्स वो ऑलरेडी ज्यादा कंज्यूम कर रहा है, उससे मिलने वाली यूटिलिटी अब धीरे धीरे होगी कम, तो गुड एक्स का कंजम्पशन भी क्या होना शुरू हो जाएगा, कम, और वाई का बढ़ना शुरू हो जाएगा। ये पॉइंट अब ऊपर की तरफ मूव करेगा, करते करते ये आ जाएगा कहां पर, डी पर, जहां पर हमारा इक्विलिब्रियम है। सो इवन दो द कंज्यूमर इज नॉट इन इक्विलिब्रियम, वो ऑटोमेटिकली इक्विलिब्रियम पर आ जाएगा बिकॉज ऑफ दिस पर्टिकुलर फेनोमेना। ओके, सो आई होप यू हैव अंडरस्टूड दिस टॉपिक। थैंक यू।